Once you have students and requirements in your course, you can start keeping track of the work that students are doing. There are two main places that you can enter scores for student work. The first is on a requirement page. Let's pretend we're going to grade the persuasion paper. I'm going to click on its name here in the requirements table, and I'll be taken to the requirement page. speXray automatically configures itself so that the way you enter grades is based upon the scale that you've chosen. Let's say Thomas Jefferson got an M, Abraham Lincoln an E, Teddy Roosevelt an R, and George Washington an N. In the version of specifications or standards-based grading that speXray uses, scores fall into one of three categories usually. Either they're passing, they're a kind of progressing score, or they're a no pass. The standard colors of green, yellow, and red are tied to each of those kinds of scores. In addition to entering scores, you can also provide comments and additional information about the student's submission. To do so, click the little speech bubble button. There's a number of different kinds of information that you can enter here. First of all, there's a notes field for entering any textual information you'd like to preserve. The detail field allows you to keep track of one single piece of information, for example, the topic that the students wrote a paper about. The changed field is automatically updated whenever you change the score for the student's work, not when you change any of this other information. You can also keep track of when the students submitted their work using a speXray standard date format. If you want to give the student an extension, you can enter it here using standard date format. Then you can also indicate whether students used tokens on this particular assignment and the reason why they did so. At the bottom of this window, you'll also find a number of different colored flags that you can set. There's no particular meaning for each of these flags, so you can choose a system that works best for you. Click Save. You'll now notice that the table has been updated with additional information. Extensions show up in this orange-brown format. The use of tokens shows up in a white circle. And if there's a submission date, that will show up as well. When students are listed in a table in speXray, you'll usually find a couple of standard buttons to use. This is the button that takes you to the checklist view for that student. This is the button for the student's score view. This is another major way that you can enter scores for work that students have done. Now, instead of looking at one requirement and all the students, you're looking at one student and all the requirements. The information displayed in this view is a little bit different from the requirement view, but you are still able to choose a score for a requirement and also access that score information box, so you can enter information there. Notice that when there are sub-requirements to a requirement, they show up, but with a kind of indentation to indicate that they are part of the content module in this case. Also, the research paper here, instead of being scored with a selectable scale, was set to be a percentage item. So what we can do is we can simply enter a percentage in that box. Because there's no specific interpretation to a percentage, speXray simply marks items with a point or with a percentage score using a gray bar to indicate that something has been entered. In this display, I can also click on the name of a requirement to jump to that requirement. So for example, I'll click on Content Module 1, and then I'll use the Columns button to get the spreadsheet view for this requirement and its sub-requirements. You can also do scoring in this view as well. So because of the extra information from the additional requirements, you won't see all the same information displayed in this view. Yet you still have access to the scoring fields as well as the score information button.